Alright, hello everyone, and excuse me if my voice doesn't sound as great as it normally does. I have a little bit of a cold, but I need to get this video up for you all, and it's much better than it was this weekend. So we're going to celebrate small victories and the fact that my voice is at least back. Okay, so we're looking at the rules of exponents this week, and this is actually one of my favorite things to do and teach, so I'm looking forward to it in this video. Shouldn't be too awful long at all. So we just have the rules here. Okay, you all may be familiar with them from high school. I'm unsure. I know that they're taught heavily in high school in your other courses. Okay, so we're going to go through and look at these. So the whole idea is I don't like to have a negative exponent. So anytime there's a negative exponent, I need to formulate a fraction. I'm only putting the part with the negative exponent in the denominator of the fraction, okay, not the positive part. For this one, it's negative in the denominator, so I can get rid of that by bringing it up out of the denominator, okay. This time, remember, I'm only dealing with the part that's raised to the negative power, so it will become x to the first on the bottom and negative 2. You could write that further simply as just negative 2 over x. Okay. Anything to the 0 power is just 1. Okay, so this is equivalent to 1. So it's like saying 5 times 1, which is 5. When you have two things in parentheses that are raised to a power, the power goes to both. So you'd end up with 5 to the 0 and z to the 0 both of which would be 1, and 1 times 1 is just 1. Okay? Excuse me. Now, we keep the 8 on this one. The WO becomes 1, and we want to bring the y to the 6 to the bottom to get rid of the negative. So we just end up with 8 over y to the 6. Now this negative is different than if we were to see the negative with parentheses. Okay, if we were to see the negative with parentheses, like this, we would say it's positive 64. Okay, but it's not. This is saying you keep the negative out front and you multiply 8 times 8 to get 64. Okay, and I kind of already showed you this second one. That one's positive due to the parentheses. Now, even powers end up being positive with parentheses, but odd powers don't. Okay, because this is like saying negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Well, that gives you negative 27. In this one, you've got negative 8 times negative 8. Two negatives make a positive, okay, when multiplied. All right. This one is also going to be negative 27. All right. And if we're looking at this, we've got 3 to the negative 2. Okay, we need to make that no longer negative by moving it to the bottom. 3 squared is 9, so you end up with 6 over 9. Okay. Now here, we need to move that negative exponent to the bottom. Okay. When we're multiplying exponents, we can add. And then when we divide, we subtract the powers. So this would be 6 minus 8, which is x to the negative 2, which leaves us with 1 over x squared. Okay, so a few of the rules were applied there on that one. So let's look at this a couple of more, and then I think you all will have it. So this one is going to be negative 25, y to the 5, and that y to the 3 needs to go to the bottom. Again, we'll subtract those powers. 5 minus 3 is 2. Okay. On this one, 5 minus 6 is what? A negative 1, but if we leave it in the bottom, it doesn't have to be negative. 8 minus 2 is 6, so we have B6 at the top. Okay. Now let's hop down to one of these. So let's work through our powers. 8 times 3 is negative 24. 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay. And y minus 5. Well, 1y and 5y is 6. That's y6. You really don't have to put xo because that's just 1. So you have negative 24. Y to the 6th. Okay. I'll let you all try that next one because it works the same. Alright, let's look at R. So these are powers raised to a power. Just for your benefit, as we're doing this for the first time, I'll rewrite it this way. I wouldn't do this every time. Negative 3 times negative 2 is 6. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Again, I don't like a negative exponent. That's got to go to the floor. I wouldn't do all this writing myself. I would have said negative 3 times 2 and jumped straight down to this step. Okay, but this is your intermediate step, and I know that whenever I'm seeing somebody show me something for the first time, I like to see the intermediate step. So that's the intermediate step for how that works. This one would go the same. So you'd have negative 4 squared. Okay. And that's in parentheses. So that ends up being 16 times a to the negative 3 raised to the 2 times b to the 10 raised to the 2. That's going to be a to the negative 6, b to the 20, because we multiply when it's power to a power. It's going to give you 16b to the 20 over a to the 6. It just takes practice to memorize these rules. I always tell my students it's very important that you memorize the rules, okay? Because it's hard to do these if you don't have the rules memorized, okay? And that's always an argument that I seem to have with my middle school students who take Math 1, is that you need to know these rules. It's not something that you fully can derive each time. Sure, you can derive it each time, but that takes a lot of work, so it's easier to just memorize the rules and move on from there. So that's my greatest recommendation on these, is to just memorize the rules. Okay? So there's a little bit, this is kind of one that I'd showed to you in a couple of steps. So there's nothing really to do to the first. This one's 3 squared, x squared, and y squared whenever I distribute my 2 into everybody. And I can just rewrite that, because 3 squared is 9. Excuse me. Again, you're going to multiply the powers in the front. So 7 times 9 is 63. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Y to the negative 3 times y to the 2. Times what? Y to the negative 1. We can't have a negative, so we need to move that to the denominator, or the bottom. Okay. And that's generally how all of these work. You just kind of have to step through the rules. V will be the last one that I look through for you all. So this negative 1 needs to find its way to everybody. So it's 7 to the negative 1. what is that? That becomes what? X to the 3, y to the negative 5. It's 21 to the negative 1, x to the positive 4, and y to the negative 1. Okay. So then we have to switch flop. So 21 over 7. The x things are fine the way they are. Well, the way they are. 3 minus 4 is negative 1, so you got x to the negative 1 down here now. A minus 5 and a minus 1 make 4. Make negative 4. Makes negative 4. And you keep that where you had the most, the larger of the powers. So it's y to the negative 4 up here because this was a larger power. So you keep it up there. How did I get that? Negative 5 minus 1 is minus 4 because that turns to addition. So then we just got to find a little step to step through where it becomes x on top and y4. Well, that x stays on the bottom, doesn't it? Because it would have been up to the top. I kind of tried to skip a step there, and I think it made it worse because those were with the 21. So those need to be up there with the 21. So this should be x, y4, and 21 divided by 7 is just 3. Okay. Excuse me, I tried to skip one of those intermediate steps and it caused me a dilemma. So I recommend working through those intermediate steps as you begin. Of course, please let me know if you have any questions and I'll upload this blank copy for you all to work on. Thank you all so much.